Everybody situated. Today, hashtag 8beautifulchallengers is going to be a fun day because we are going to talk about carbs and diet and food and what to do. And I've gotten lots and lots and lots of questions about that. So I'm excited to bring you the ideas that have brought me success and kind of demystify and de-puzzleify some of the things that I did that really helped me, and just talk about a variety of diet philosophies and that kind of things in general, so that it's more clear to you, so you can make your diet decisions from an empowered place instead of feeling like you don't know what to do. Myself, for years and years and decades, I struggled with trying different diets and trying to figure out what worked for me. The first couple times that you do a diet, you just jump in with both feet and you're like, this is the thing, this is going to get me where I want to go. There's all this proof, there's this philosophy, and so I'm going to go. And then after you've been kind of up and down a few times, then you start to transition from I want super quick results to I really just want something I can live with and not have to freak out about, not stress about, not think about all day long, every day, not feel like I have to follow rules or count every minute thing. And so I too was in that place for a long, long time. And some of the decisions that I made led me to find what worked for me and much more quickly than I could have ever imagined, like with results that I was frankly shocked by how my body responded. And so I did a couple of things beforehand, how I prepped, and so that my body was able to understand the message I was giving it with the food I was eating. So I'll talk about that, and I'll just go through everything with you. So how many carbs should a woman eat? What is the answer? You have all of these philosophies out there. There's keto, there's paleo, there's low carb. There used to be Atkins before keto was cool. And then you have people saying count macros, just know your macros and whatever, what in the heck is a macro anyway? And so there's just so many ideas out there. And of course, the fashionable thing, especially if you read any kind of fitness or diet magazines or book, everybody tries to be contrarian. Everybody tries to say all those other philosophies are wrong, and this is the secret, this is the magic, right? And so of course it's confusing. Of course, what are women supposed to do? And I will tell you right now that my answer for that, with all sincerity, is probably the answer that everyone wants to hear the least. And it depends on you and your body, but don't worry, I will not leave you there. I will tell you exactly what I did and what worked for my body, in the hopes that maybe it will work for yours. And so we're all humans, we're all massively genetically different, and yet we're all humans. And so we have a lot of things that are the same. And so what I want you to take away from our chat today is to become aware of how to watch for patterns within yourself, and what works for you, and acknowledge what works for you, and to stick on one path long enough to discover what works for you, to allow the choices you're making to have momentum, so you can see the fruits of your labor. And so let's start by just kind of having a general discussion about what is a carb, what does it do, why do they plague us? Sugar's a carb, right? But also foods with fiber have carbs. And so, like, is a carb good or bad? And there are different kinds of carbs. And so let's start by talking about how many carbs a woman needs. Well, there are different stages of our life. In your 20s, your body's doing different things than it is when you're 40 plus and 50 plus. And so your needs may vary just based on where you are at in your cycle of life, in your season of life. But then also month to month, hormones go day to day, your hydration changes. What you ate yesterday may have an effect on how hungry you are today or your energy needs for today. And so the ultimate best answer is to tune into yourself. It's not only the hardest answer for most people, and including for me, but it's the truest answer, right? For what works for you. And I want you, during the course of this challenge, to get to know yourself better, because you can love somebody better that you know better, right? If I say nice to meet you, I can care about you as a human, but if I spend time talking to you, writing notes back and forth, right? Like maybe you might journal to yourself. As I get to know you on a deeper level, I can care about you on a deeper level. And I want you to fall madly in love with yourself, or find a way to discover beautiful parts of you that you may not have been aware of before, and appreciate yourself and truly love yourself. Because I think when we come from a place of loving ourselves and respecting ourselves as one of God's creations, then we can give that same grace and perspective to others. And this little focus on getting your weight loss or getting your diet under control can transition in a bigger way to treating everyone around us with more kindness. Because I mean, who gets in a bad mood? Like if your diet's off the rails and you're like, you just get grouchy and you're like, everybody watch out, don't come near me. Right. And so I want to eliminate as much of that as possible by helping give you tools and frameworks that you can experiment with within your own life to feel successful, to feel like I don't battle with food, with appetites, with cravings. I know what to do, and I can still enjoy the things I eat, and I can feel good about myself at the end of every day. Like regularly, I feel happy with the choices I made, and I'm not full of guilt and shame, and I'm not trying to run away. I'm not trying to avoid my scale. I don't want to throw it out the window anymore. I just like, I'm doing me, and I got this handled. I want you to feel like, as far as your nutrition, you got this handled, and it's not even a thing you ever really think about. It's by default amazing, and you're supporting and sustaining on a habitual, automatic basis the body that you want and that you love and you appreciate. And you can turn your focus towards other important missions and purposes in your life. And so let's start talking the nitty-gritty. How many carbs should a woman eat? Now, if you're not doing any kind of a plan, and you're just going day to day, most women that are appropriately following a 2,000 calorie diet, your normal carbs, if you're splitting them into categories, generally the recommendation is 225 to 325 calories carbs. And so 225 to 325 carbs for a woman that's following an appropriate 2,000 calorie a day diet. That's kind of in the realm. Now that depends on how active you are and all those kinds of things, height, body composition, all those kinds of things. But that's kind of the range. So knowing that that's our starting point, then if we're going to do something on the complete opposite end of normal, let's say we want to super restrict carbs and we want to put our body into ketosis, which is, I won't go deep on the science on this. There's lots of places the science is, but basically, if you think of the cave woman and the harvest has been over and it's February and there's no food around, you can't, the ground is frozen, you can't dig for roots. All of the apples that you gathered in the fall, you already ate them in the cave, and there's nothing you can do except for this poor cow that's standing in the snow. You're gonna be like, we're gonna have burgers for dinner, right? Or whatever, steak for dinner. And so you go and you harvest the cow with gratitude and be like, we're having steak tonight. And so your body doesn't have really any carbs or any other sources of energy. And so it's very tuned into finding the most efficient fuel, which is fat, and fat can come as a fuel source. Once your body understands how to turn to fat and convert it for your energy and your fuel source, it can turn to the fat that you're eating and also the fat that you carry on your body. And I do want to spend a little moment of gratitude right now to just thank our body for being so efficient at making sure we can get safely through every day and not starve. And so our body, with all its genius design, it just tucks away extra energy, right? In the form of a fat, right? But we can access that for later if we want to, right? If we need to run away from a tiger or anything. But it'll just tuck it away. Like it'll put it on your arm. It'll put it on your center of gravity, like around your hips, around your middle, around your thighs and bum, like to keep it kind of out of your way so you can still get through life. But our body's an amazing machine. So it kind of socks away anything for later. And that's where people run into issues if you have been on that diet roller coaster, because it thinks famine when you're on a program and then save right when you're off a program. And I'll talk about reverse dieting, which is something in the fitness competition and bodybuilding world, a tool that they use to help minimize that rebound effect of kind of punishing yourself after the diet. I don't want you to be involved in that if you have seen that as a pattern that you've dealt with. But so this full carbs, 300, let's say, for the average woman, and then keto or ketosis, if we want to just pretend, if we're trying to send our body the message like, hey, burn fat, pretend there's no harvest left and you got to make me survive, burn fat. If we want to tell it to do that, what's generally recognized in the diet world, and there's lots of books about this, if you've read Atkins years ago, or now keto is the more popular, kind of basically the same thing, but they preach 20 carbs a day as a max. And years ago, as part of my diet journey, I did do Atkins, and I did it pretty strictly. And I remember going to Red Lobster with my hubby one night because I was like, hey, I can have all kinds of fish and protein. I can have a salad. I can have broccoli. And that's a great meal. That's still a meal I would eat today. And I was like, I don't know if I can handle having a biscuit in front of me. So I was like, don't bring biscuits, which if you've ever been to Red Lobster, that's a thing, right? So I was like, keep it away. We're going to do this. And so I got through my meal. I was feeling successful. And I counted everything, how I was doing. And at the end, I was just sitting there and I was like, I had this healthy craving for a strawberry. I just wanted a single strawberry. I don't know why this is making me emotional. But I sat there and I had done everything right. I had followed all the rules and I was like, I should be celebrating. I should be experiencing success. And I just thought of this strawberry and I was like, I shouldn't have a strawberry. I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, God made beautiful strawberries and I want one. My body wants one. I probably want the vitamin C or some of the nutrients or maybe the fiber or the hydration that you can only get through actual fresh foods, you know? And I just remember feeling like, okay, this is wrong. This is wrong. A diet that says I cannot eat one strawberry with, you know, because I'd already had, 15 or however many carbs, like my allotment for the day, because it was after dinner, I had all my food. And I was like, either I fail on this plan, right? Because our brain just does drama. I fail, or I don't eat the strawberry, or I fail. These are my choices. Deprive myself of a very healthy, good item for my body, or feel like a failure. And I'm like, those choices suck. I do not want to feel like a failure. And I want to eat a strawberry if I want one. There has to be a diet where I can do both, where I can feel like I'm winning and eating a strawberry and still reaching my goals, right? So at that moment in time, I decided, okay, Atkins is not for me. Keto is not for me. Like there has to be something better, because I felt in that moment that desire for the strawberry was me listening to my body. And I did not want to deny or ignore that. So those are the two ends of the spectrums. Normal. Well, let's talk about the third end of the spectrum. So there's normal, and then there's low carb, keto, force your body into ketosis, right? And then on the opposite end of the spectrum is what happens in the second half of the day or the second half of the week, when we've been on a plan and we've been white knuckling, we've been trying to force ourselves, and then we vary off a little bit, and then you throw in the towel and you're like, forget it. I'll start again Monday. Show me the donuts, show me the treats, like bring the carbs, like bring the basket of whatever at Red Lobster, right? Like, I'm not going to count. I'm just going to ignore, and I'm going to do what I want and eat carbs because they're yummy, right? Because our body, again, has so much wisdom. It says, I know that we can get a super condensed amount of calories to store for whenever from carbs. And so let's go. So your body urges you, unless you have directed otherwise, and we'll talk about controlling blood sugar and sending signals to your body and to your subconscious mind to help you manage this at a sustainable level, right? But so that's the ends of the spectrum. There's like almost none, a normal amount. And those stats, by the way, that are posted for the average woman, it doesn't say how old she is. It doesn't say what's going on with her hormones. It doesn't talk about what she ate yesterday. Maybe if you did go off the rails on carbs on one day, it doesn't mean that you throw away the rest of the week or the month or beat yourself up for however many months until it's so bad that you get back on track, right? If you do have that day where you're just kind of like, The ice cream carton is empty. There's nothing I can do about it. When you reach that place, you can come swing the pendulum. And so I want you to feel like with nutrition and specifically carbs, because sugar does fall in this category of carbohydrate, that all hope is not lost. Don't throw in the towel. We can find a balance. It doesn't have to be black or white with diet. There's so many places in the middle. And I love when I talk, because we tend to go to extremes, right? Like I'm a success or I'm a failure. I won or I lost. It's all in or I messed up, right? Irreparably. And so I want you to think about day and night. And as I greeted some of you walking into this room here for this chat, there was a beautiful sunrise pink light on the top of the mountains that I can see out my window. And if there was only blinding sun, think staring at the sun, blinding white light, or pitch black of the darkest night, we'd miss a whole lot in the middle, right? We'd miss the beautiful pink on the mountain. We'd miss the sunset where the whole sky is orange and purple and pink and it's gorgeous. And so I don't want you to miss that in your diet as well. I don't want you to feel like black and white is the only options. Look for the beauty and the glory in the middle and enjoy that. And so if you feel like, oh, I was a little extra carby today, so I can be like, I can reduce a little bit tomorrow and I don't have to struggle with it. I can just kind of even it out and we can proceed forward according to a healthy plan that feels good and sustainable. And so I really want to draw attention to like, while in the 8 Beautiful Challenge, there are guidelines, say 120 carbs per day, which served me well, and I'll talk about that more, on the full plan, and 180 carbs per day on the petite plan. You are at liberty to make choices even on the day-to-day that support you. If you have trouble setting guidelines for yourself, you may use one of my prescribed guidelines, but you also have the challenge of choosing your own version of what eating style works for you. And so I just want you to be aware that I want this all or nothing, start over and try to do it perfect. I want all of that kind of stuff off the table. And I want you to slowly start shifting that to the side of your mindset, because I promise you that if you were doing this black and white success or fail thinking for your diet and being hard on yourself, you're also probably doing that in other areas of your life, and it would benefit you to learn to allow yourself more grace. And as I've said before, once you start learning those thought patterns for within yourself, you can also extend that outward and allow more grace for others in your world. And it feels good to, it's a form of forgiveness, right? Forgiving yourself quickly. And that is one reason this whole black and white kind of epidemic of perfectionism that so many women struggle with, that I don't want to encourage that. I want to slowly help you start putting that out of the way that you think, your thought patterns, and bring healthy, more uplifting thought patterns to you. So it's just like, that's what I did. And that's why I incorporated those forgiveness pieces, those 8 forgiveness items into the challenge, so that if you get to day 4 and you're like, shoot, I was doing so good, I was 100% on track, and then this one thing, you're not a failure. The system's not a failure. Maybe you're just learning the new skills, and give yourself time to do that. Use that forgiveness piece. I know some of you used all of your 8 forgivenesses for the entire challenge in the first 2 days. And it made me so happy to hear that despite not getting that strong out of the gate start that you wanted, that you're like, you know what? I'm going to keep forgiving myself. I was like, oh, thank you. They got it. They got it. Yeah. So I put the forgiveness in black and white, and you put the forgiveness where it belongs in your world. And that includes for your diet, and that includes for other things that you may be holding yourself a perfectionist to. Okay, so we're talked about how many carbs is appropriate for women, and I chose the levels that I did for the full and the petite challenge because I really got amazing results. And I want to talk about why. You've probably seen some of the photos that I did at my 8-ish week mark, just celebrating my success. I was very happy, and it's important to remember those good moments so you can inspire yourself later to mark your progress. And I hope that these daily pictures that you're taking start to become a form of a non-food reward in a sense, and just looking forward to like, oh, I can't wait to take my picture. Let me put on my Snuggie workout stuff, bombshell. Like, I want you to just start getting in that habit of looking in the mirror and being like, bombshell, what are you doing today? So good looking, girl. There you are again in my mirror. I want you to start having these happy patterns of talking to yourself. So what I did, and I will share specifics shortly on some of the snacks that I eat and the meals and the things, is I had to choose what kind of diet program I was going to stick to for the multi-week challenge that I did. And so I was like, well, I've tried this, I've tried that. I kind of, in my mind, I went over all of these plans that I had tried, and I had done intermittent fasting before. And if you don't know what that is, that's where you choose a specific eating window of the day and you only eat during a certain time, and then when the window closes, you stop eating until the next day. So for example, you'll probably hear the term 16-8 in the intermittent or the IF world. So that means that you fast for 16 hours and you only eat during an 8-hour window. And so what that could look like is at 8 p.m. I stop eating and I only drink water until the next day, until noon the next day. So that's 16 hours from 8 p.m. until noon. And then I can eat whatever my plan is between noon and 8 p.m. I get all my calories in this window. And then at 8 p.m. I stop eating again and I'll fast for 16. And I'll make a more detailed video because this is a very juicy topic, but your body can do all kinds of stuff when you pause from putting food in it. It doesn't have to hurry up and digest and send your nutrients all over your body. If we give it a break from doing that, it can do some house cleaning, and there's some very positive health benefits that come from that, dramatic, including reversing disease in a very accelerated rate. And also your body will reprocess your proteins as you fast and get rid of toxic or harmful proteins that could potentially lead to cancer. And also it is a method that has been shown effective for reducing loose skin for people that do lose a lot of weight. If they do it using intermittent fasting, your body is kind of taking those cells that it doesn't need all that extra skin anymore and repurposing them and recycling them. Again, the genius of the body is so amazing. I'm so very, very grateful for it. So I won't go at length about intermittent fasting. I'll do another separate training on that at some point. But anyway, so that is something that I had done before. And when you do that, you teach your body, we're going to get food again. So it doesn't go into that starvation, hold everything mode. You teach it, hey, guess what? We're going to look for fat for energy. So I want to talk about how carbs work. First of all, when you start doing a low carb kind of a plan, the word carbohydrate, carb refers to the kind of nutrient and the chemical breakdown, anatomical breakdown that it is composed of. And then hydrate, which I never understood this before, like the last couple of months. I'm like, duh. Why do people sometimes feel like they're retaining water when they eat carbs? Because that's what a carbohydrate does. And so when you go on a keto or an Atkins or something, that kind of a plan, a low carb plan, your body starts letting go of extra water weight, and maybe you'll notice a reduction in swelling or just like less puffy. And that's because all this hydration is kind of not an option for your body. It's going to leaner sources. So on an evolutionary kind of a standpoint, think cave woman again. It's like, okay, if there's not much around, like, let's lean you down so you can chase after that buffalo a little more swiftly and more efficiently, right? You don't have this water weight on you. So anyway, these are ways to think about it. And so, but I know myself, and I know I like to eat treats, and I know that I have taste buds and they were designed to be a part of my pleasure. And I like eating good foods. And I'm proud to call myself a little bit of a food snob. And that title has served me well. It's let me say no to things that were not as healthy or good for me. With easier, the labels you put on yourself are so important. So when I started calling myself a food snob, I was like, yeah, I'll eat that if that's served to me on a 5-star plate. And I'm not going to eat this, whatever came in a plastic carton at the grocery store, right? Like, unless there's a specific reason, but in general, I can just be a snob about that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so as I was choosing my diet plan for my multi-week challenge, I was thinking about which diet plan should I choose. I've tried all these different diets, and I had done the intermittent fasting, which I just talked a little bit about. And then I'd also done keto and I'd done these for months and months. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. I did a stint of keto for many months, and my body had gotten used to it. I had gone through a phase when I very first started keto. I bought a bunch of cookbooks. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to eat. I tried to kind of recreate bread and carbs by baking cheese and doing like all these creative keto recipes. And there's some good resources there. And if you just even look online, or I can share some. But looking back now, the way I do things is so much simpler. I don't feel like I have to recreate every recipe and do it in a keto way so that I can eat things that I enjoy. And so, but that was part of the learning phase that I needed to go through at that time. That was kind of a bridge. I felt like when I eat zucchini noodles with meat sauce on it and cheese, I wanted to have a breadstick with it, right? And so at that point in my journey, it was appropriate that I pull out a recipe book that says, make this breadstick mostly out of cheese and almond flour. And so then I made that, and I was so happy. And when you do this keto kind of low carb lifestyle, you want to kind of be aware of not eating too many calories in general. But you kind of have a green light on butter, which I'm a huge fan of butter. And for the record, I got my blood testing done for life insurance not too long ago. And my doctor and the rating were like, why is your cholesterol so low? And I'm like, I can eat butter. Okay. That's my body. And so you pay attention to what your body does when you put different nutrients in it. But that kind of was nice for me to be able to debunk, like, eating cholesterol makes you have high cholesterol. That's not true, because that was a part of a staple. And I had done keto for quite a bit. And so if it was going to shift my body negatively into the high cholesterol or danger zone or anything like that, I would have known because of the blood work I did. And so doing blood work is an optional part of this challenge, but it's kind of fun to have measurable things that you can look at as you go so you just have more reasons to celebrate your progress as you go, right? So anyway, I had done keto before, and I kind of had learned how to do it. So anytime you're building a lifestyle that you're going to sustain, there's going to be a learning curve. When you learn new habits, it's going to take a lot of thought and effort and mental energy while you learn the skills that can become automatic later and support you without any thought and focus and energy later. So if you feel like making a change is hard, a couple of you have been like, oh, how do I count carbs? It's so hard. It's only hard because it's foreign. I'm gonna say that again. The thing that you're doing, that you're trying to make part of your life, it's only hard because it's foreign. As we do it more and more and get familiar with it, you build these brain pathways that cause you to become more efficient, to automate the behavior, to make it a habit. And so if it takes you some time to learn these skills of discovering what to make when you're hungry, what to grab, what to shop for, it's okay. You're not doing it wrong, and you are worth the effort. It is worth it for you to spend the time studying and observing yourself. What do you like? What fits? What is going to be sustainable? You can't just necessarily get somebody else's plan off the shelf and be like, well, that should work for me. Maybe. More than likely, you're going to have to find how it fits for you, because the way you think about food, the way you respond to food, any kind of food sensitivities, all of that will vary for each person. There is no one size, right? And so again, I go back to you getting to know you and studying your patterns and how do you feel when you make certain choices. And so I want to stick to that. So in me choosing this plan, I had done something like this before when I did keto. I'd done something like this before when I had done intermittent fasting. I did all kinds of other things. I had done Weight Watchers a decade and a half ago, and I learned a few skills from that. And every diet that I have done, I've learned a few things from it. And so I hope you give yourself some value for the diets or the programs that you have put time and energy and info into learning about in the past, because they are all part of your journey, and they're all they serve you if you allow them to. I'm sure you've maybe picked up a snack here or there that you can use as part of your repertoire of what you do for go-to healthy eating, right? And so don't devalue, don't feel like even if you've gained all your weight back plus some, I don't want you to feel like that diet was a failure, because I'm sure you learned. Anytime you put effort and energy into developing yourself in some way, it stays with you. One of a mentor that I have, Myron Golden, says, all work works. All work works. It either works towards your result or it works on you. It works for you or it works on you, but all work works. So don't ever discount your efforts that you've put in. So as I was choosing what diet plan to stick to, I had done a lot of late night, scrolling through YouTube and whatever. And I came across a study, because I continually try to like remotivate myself, get myself on track, right? I'm just the same as you. I was looking for like, what is the thing that I can just do, right? And until you find it, it's easy to obsess about, like, anyway. So I had been watching these videos and I came across a video, and I really need to go back and find exactly the source. But the person in the video was talking about how there was a university study that they took, not like 20 people, but like hundreds or even thousands. I think it was over 1,000 people they did this study on at a university level. And they took some people and did 20 carbs or less, so full ketosis, right? And they took this other group and let them have up to 120 carbs a day. And as they went through the different weeks of this trial, there was very little difference in the results. So for my mind, that was kind of like, my brain kind of exploded, because on the keto side, you have all people citing all kinds of science with authority saying, hey, you got to do this, or you kick yourself out of ketosis, and then you're wasting all your effort and nothing matters and your body doesn't go grab fat. And so I wondered, could that be true? I don't know. That sounds kind of too good to be true, right? Have you ever heard of a diet and they promise all these things and you're like, and it's so easy and I can have pizza and ice cream and still lose 20 pounds. And I'm like, I don't know. I got trust issues, right? With some of the stuff I hear on the internet. But that kind of stayed in the back of my mind. So when it came to the time to choose what I was going to do, I said, you know what? I'm going to put this 120 carbs a day to the test. It's backed by a scientific study, and I'm going to see if maybe that would work for me, because I've done the keto, right? The Atkins or whatever, and the whole strawberry thing, like that did not sit right. So I don't think that that's sustainable. And I wanted, when I was doing these weeks of focus, I want to build habits I can keep and just turn my brain off and just like eat food like normal on a normal day. And I automatically, anytime I randomly step on the scale, it makes me happy. That was my goal. I want something sustainable without any effort. So I'm like, let me try out this 120 carbs. Now, I will say, I had some pretty fast results, even though I was watching myself over 8 weeks and even longer. I got some pretty dramatic results in the first 5 weeks. And now going back to what a carbohydrate is, anytime you do a low carb kind of a plan, your body starts shedding a little bit of water. So it's not uncommon to lose 3 or 4 or 5, or sometimes people lose 7 pounds, just depending on what your body's doing, in the first few days. And you're like, whoa, yeah. And I think everybody kind of secretly knows, like, that's not all fat. I didn't exercise that much. I didn't burn through that. I didn't change my hormones that much in just a few days. But it's kind of fun to see. It's like an immediate gratification, right? To look at scale and be like, yay, I'm seeing progress. So that was fun. But this 120 carbs allowance, and we'll get into how I measure that in a minute, but it gave me a sense of freedom. And this was so different than any diet I had ever done before, because I always had, I was counting, and the only thing, I just want to be clear, the only thing I counted was carbs. I did not count calories. I did not weigh and measure my food. I did not even count protein. If I were tempted to kind of in the back of my mind count something secondary besides the carbs, it was fiber, because I want things to keep moving through, and I want to make sure I was getting enough fiber to keep my system flowing and regular while I was doing a high protein kind of a diet, because you don't want to run into any issues with that. But this feeling of freedom in allowing myself up to 120 carbs, and I was militant. I was like, I will not exceed, and I did not at any point exceed 120 carbs in a day. But in the beginning, I wanted to just experience that when I did Weight Watchers way back when, we would count points and we would write them in a little book. And what I liked about that system was knowing that by the end of the week, if I had extra points, then I could have myself a little treat. I had like a little bit of freedom, and that was enough to keep me going. So this felt very familiar as far as I have permission to eat something that I truly want. If I have like a special favorite cookie that comes in a pink box and they only make it every so many weeks, I could have a portion of that treat that was fun for me on a day and still stay within my guidelines I set for myself. So it was a feeling of freedom that I had not really experienced. And so I was excited to have that. And if someone tries to make you do something, you just want to rebel, right? And so at least that's me. That's my little rebel spirit. But when I felt I had this freedom, I was like, well, I could eat up to 120 carbs a day, but let me just focus on protein and veg. So that became my mantra, and that's been my mantra for a lot of time. So if you're looking like, what do I eat? Let's eat some protein and some veg, because vegetables are largely very low calorie, very low carb, and I'm not talking about potatoes, those would be different, but like broccoli, greens, cucumbers, celery, peppers, onions, like those are what I call veg. So if I can just do fajitas with chicken and peppers and onions, or I could do a stuffed bell pepper, or stuffed with hamburger and tomato sauce and cheese on it, and so if your primary focus when you're developing your meal is protein and veg, then if you want to add a little bit of something like how I had wanted that breadstick before when I had my zucchini noodles with meat sauce and cheese, and when I was doing a full keto plan, I had to try to make a breadstick out of cheese and almond flour and and bake it up, and sometimes they're really good though. They're not punishment, and they are in plan. In fact, I'll post this recipe for you guys because it was awesome. But instead of feeling like I had to go to all of that trouble and baking everything from scratch, because again, the focus is sustainable because we're all busy and have all these demands on our lives. Instead of doing that, I could have a piece of sourdough toast with butter on it, because that's less than 30 carbs, 20 to 30, depending on the size of your bread, right? And so I was like, this can get easier. One of my favorite go-to things that I was able to allow myself was a bowl of oat bran. And for whatever reason, I just got on this oat bran kick. And so if you take a serving is a third of a cup of dry oat bran, and I would put it in a big bowl and put water. I put sea salt in it and cook it up in the microwave for 2.5 minutes. And then, and so that is 25 carbs, 6 grams of fiber. So 19 net carbs, where I'd write down 19 carbs, and I'll go through this math with you again in a second. But so I know, okay, oat bran is 19 carbs. Then if I wanted to have a half a cup of milk, I could have 2% milk, nice and creamy. And these are the things that I like. You're going to find what works for you and what you like and what makes you happy in your diet. But a cup of milk I know has 12 carbs. So if I have a half a cup, that's 6 carbs. 6 carbs of milk plus 19 net carbs of oat bran is 25 carbs. So I can have oat bran with milk for 25 carbs, and I still have plenty of carbs left if I want to have an open-faced sandwich for lunch, or a breadstick at dinner, or whatever the thing may be. Or maybe the protein bar I have has 10 net carbs. That's okay. I can have a handful of nuts. I can do these different things. So I can have flexibility. I can have freedom. And so knowing that I did have freedom, I was like, I can eat whatever I want. Well, I'm just going to have a protein shake right now, or I'm just going to have eggs with ham or maybe I'll do a Greek scramble, and I'm going to do spinach in my eggs and feta and eggs, and I'm going to eat until I'm satisfied, and then I'm going to stop. And so that's another thing that's important is since we have this freedom, there's nothing we have to do. We don't have to finish what's on our plate. In fact, you might discover, like I did, that I was just eating kind of a lot of extra food, because once I settled into a nice low blood sugar groove and I wasn't craving stuff all the time, I was like, I'm not that hungry. I don't need to eat that much food. So if I don't feel like eating food, again, that fasting mechanism kicks in and your body can clean house. So if I didn't feel like eating food, I just wouldn't. I was also very busy at this time in my career. And so sometimes I would get distracted with getting projects done. But when you're hungry, your body will be like, hey, excuse me, it's hungry time. It's time to eat something, right? And so when I would find that, I always make sure I had packed myself a healthy snack so I could grab it. But in general, if I wasn't hungry, I didn't eat. Or, and this was hard in the beginning. I'll tell you, this was hard because mentally we have so many cultural things about what we should do with food. We should clean our plate, right? So it was difficult for me to go to the trouble of making myself maybe that delicious Greek scramble in the morning with the feta and the spinach and the eggs. And it was so yummy. It was hot, right? I made the time for myself. And I would eat 2/3 of it and be like, shoot, I think I'm done. I'm not hungry. But it's so beautiful and I made it and it's my food and I don't want to waste food. And we all grew up with like hearing about the starving children in China and we love them, but us eating calories that we don't need does not help them or serve them in any way, right? But what does serve you is, and the first few times it will feel foreign, right? It'll feel unfamiliar to say, you know what, there's still food on my plate. So I went through a period where I would take whatever was left on my plate, the extraness, and I would like save it in a bowl in the fridge. And then after I kept not eating it because food snob, when I am going to take time to ingest calories, I want them to be high quality and very desirable because I'm either going to have to burn them or wear them, right? So I want the food I eat to be good because I have to burn it or wear it. And if I don't want to eat yesterday's leftover eggs, I'm not going to. I have a dog. She enjoyed it very much. So you find what works for you, but the value in not finishing what's on your plate is that you start to see, maybe I'll make less next time. If I started with a 1/3 of a cup of oat bran when I made it, and I was like, 80% of the way through the bowl, I could just stop and I could be good. Then maybe next time, instead of making 1/3 of a cup, I'm going to make 1/4 of a cup of mix. And okay, and that's how we stop wasting. Because if you eat something and you don't want it and you don't need it, you are still wasting it. That's a Weight Watchers lesson I learned that has stuck with me for decades. If you eat it and you didn't want it and you didn't desire it and you didn't need it and you ate it anyway to not waste it, you still wasted it. And now you're punished for it because now you have to burn it. You have to burn it before you can burn other stuff off that you want to burn off, right? As far as body. So anyway, that freedom of being able to choose however many carbs I want, I found that I would get to between 30 and 60 carbs eating whatever I wanted, as far as if I wanted bread here, if I wanted, one day I went to Great Harvest and they give you this big old thick slice of bread. And I'm like, oof, that counts as 2 or maybe 3 slices of bread. So I'll write down 50 carbs because I wanted fresh, delicious bread that they were handing to me for free. And I'm like, I choose that. I'll have fajitas instead of a burrito tonight, right? Because I could have a tortilla because that's about 25 carbs, depending on the size of the tortilla, right? So I became very aware as I was looking at labels at how many carbs. And eventually, to go back to my oat bran example, if I discovered I wanted more carbs, I'm like, oh, well, there's lactose. Os means sugar, right? Lactose is a milk sugar that is in milk, naturally occurring. And so if I want lesser carbs, I don't want to use those 6 carbs from my half a cup of milk at breakfast. What if I do oat bran or oat milk? Almond milk. That's what I was trying to say. Almond milk instead of actual milk. And I look and I'm like, 1 carb in a whole cup of almond milk. So if I do my oat bran and I do almond milk instead, I can have a few more carbs for later in the day. And so I started finding what was working by having that awareness of counting the carbs. I started finding where I could be, and I could feel very satisfied. At no point during my entire weeks of my challenge did I ever feel white knuckle, like I can't stand this. Oh, I can't wait till it's over so I can just binge whatever. And when I got towards the end of my weeks, people are like, what are you going to eat now that you can eat everything? And I'm like, I might have like a small slice of a flourless chocolate torte because I like my dark chocolate, my rich, yummy desserts, but I don't need a lot of it. And I'm not like, can't wait. And here I've been done for a while, many days, and I still haven't actually gone and had that. I had a couple things. I made myself some pancakes without counting, when I was done with my focus time on the challenge. But at no point did I feel like, I can't wait to be done. This is driving me crazy. I'm craving. Never. And so that freedom, even though I could eat up to 120 calories or carbs per day, I found I kind of settled in that 30 to 60 range, and that was all that I needed. And then I traveled, I took a trip for work. I went to New Orleans, and I've been there before, and I know that food is an event if you go there. And then I also knew I was going to Dallas on a girls' trip. and food and barbecue and delicious Southern cooking is also a thing when you go to Texas, right? And so even though I knew I had those trips coming, I was like, I can take on this challenge. And I feel like that I can stick within my parameters. So most days of those trips, I did eat all the way up to the line of 120. Like I say, I went to 111 one day, and I was like, in case I didn't record something or I have an error in calculating, I'm not going over 120, right? That was the university study, and I want to make 100% sure I'm doing this the way that I said I would do it. And so, and then one day I did eat up to, I think, 118 or 119, but I never actually hit 120 just because I want to make triple sure that I had integrity and I stuck to my word. But that was not the norm. Every single day I didn't eat necessarily 120 carbs, 120 carbs, but I could have. And so that freedom made it easier. And so you find kind of what your body needs. And some days I would eat under 20 carbs, and some days I would eat 90 carbs. And I would still go to restaurants, and I would just, my phone became my really, really helpful tool. And if you look at my Google search history, because I didn't even really have, I tried a couple apps. I didn't love any of the apps about figuring carbs. Maybe you have a resource you like. But for me, I was like, hey, Google, how many carbs in a third of a cup of black beans on this Cafe Rio salad I'm about to eat, right? And I would make a note and I would write it down. Okay, 13 carbs in a half a cup of black beans. Okay. And then what about in this tortilla? I could have the tortilla. Sometimes I had the tortilla presented to me on a plate, and I ate a few bites, however much I want. And then instead of accounting for the 30 carbs in the tortilla, I ate about a third of it. So I would go back and adjust and count to 10 carbs if I had a third of a 30 carb tortilla. Makes sense? And so what I would do to make sure I stayed within my goals is when I was about to eat something, I would look at and I ate out a lot because that was my lifestyle. My job demanded it. And so if you're at home, this should ideally be easier for you because you can make a note and hang it on the inside of a cupboard in your kitchen and refer to the things that you commonly go to, so you don't have to look them up all the time. But I was out and about. And so while I was sitting down wondering what to order at a restaurant, for example, I would start Googling, okay, and I would write in my planner ahead of time, okay, these are the carb ingredients. I didn't have to worry about the vegetables. I'm just like, okay, I know rice is a carb. I know a bean is a carb. I know a potato is a carb. A sweet potato is a carb that I'm counting, right? Because vegetables are free in my head, how I did this. So I'd write down the components of the meal, and I would make sure, okay, this falls within my parameters, and then I would go ahead and order it. Or one day I wanted a sweet potato and it was 52 carbs. And I'm like, I only have 42 left today. So I'm going to have 3/4 of this sweet potato with some stuff on it. And it's good. So finding how can I stick to my thing that's important to me? How can I stay in integrity with what I'm doing? And so let's talk about how you can actually calculate the carbs. And this is one of my fun little treats. Sometimes it's a matter of just finding what you like and experimenting. And I will just say, you'll waste some money trying some things and you're like, no, nope. Now I have a whole pack. For example, JoJo's is a dark chocolate brand, and sometimes I like their stuff, but I went out on a limb. I got this macadamia coconut thing, and I had like a whole Costco size bag, and I took a bite and I'm like, that was the wrong call. And now I have, okay. So maybe I can chop it up and put it in some little keto cookies or maybe I can put it in a smoothie or bake with it or something. I don't know. So I had to adapt, so that I didn't, but sometimes you'll try stuff and you'll be like, hard no. And then sometimes you'll be like, this is the best ever. And so this is Lakanto. Lakanto is one of the brands of a sugar substitute. I will say I don't love absolutely everything that they put out, but chocolate covered peanuts for the win. I do not at this moment have an affiliate link, but if I ever do get one, I will let you know, because this was one thing. And it says here, serving size, 4 servings per container. And I was like, depends on what movie you're watching. That might be 1 serving, right? No. But what you'll find is when you start with some of these sugar substitutes, they don't kick in your sugar cravings the way actual normal sugar does. So you can have a handful or 2 or 3 and just be like, I think I'm good. Like if I wanted more, I could have more. But how do I calculate the carbs on this? So my friend Rhonda brought up a fun fact that in Europe, their nutrition guidelines and analyses are different. And they actually do not count fiber as part of the carb or sugar alcohols. And I'm not going to dive deep into what sugar alcohol is, but it's a modern convenience that can help us make things taste sweet and not trigger your insulin response or insulin resistance the same way that sugar does. And so they don't count it as a carb when you're doing the net carb calculation, but it is technically a carb that's an ingredient. So they have to disclose it the way the American system is set up for nutrition facts. And so, for example, I'll take you through this math. This one serving and this serving size is something that I taught my children is, okay, if you're going to have a bowl of cereal, what's the serving size? It's not the largest bowl you can find and you pour it till it's full, right? That's not a serving. What does the manufacturer say a serving is? So that's a tool I used in my home to educate not only myself, but also my family on, okay, because how many servings are in that bag of chips you just ate? Like I wanted them to have an awareness as well. So there's 4 servings in this bag. And so the serving size, if you look at this, I don't know how closely you've ever looked at nutrition labels, but it's amount per serving. So calories, which I'm basically ignoring, and fat, I'm basically ignoring. Protein, I kind of just makes me a little bit happy because I know that muscles love protein. So I'm like, is there some protein in it? Oh, good. There's 3 grams. Well, there's peanuts in it. Well, that makes sense. But my focus goes immediately to the carb calculation. So this says per serving, 11 carbohydrates. Okay. From that, to get the net carbohydrate, so to be clear, for my 120 carbs per day, those were net carbs. So anybody having math questions, I want them to be answered by the time we go through this. So total carbohydrates, 11, dietary fiber, 4 grams in a serving, right? So what I'm going to do is from the total carbs, 11, I'm going to subtract 4 carbs for fiber. So that leaves me with 7 carbs, right? Because fiber is good for us and it doesn't affect our blood sugar the way that we're paying attention to for the purposes of this challenge. And so then I've got 7 carbs. Now, sugar alcohols, the things that they're using to make this taste yummy and sweet, there are 5 grams. So I had 11 and I subbed the fiber out 4 grams. So I have 7 net carbs, but then I'm going to subtract the sugar alcohols, which is 5. So 7 minus 5 sugar alcohols is 2. So even though the label says 11 carbs, there are 2 net carbs in one serving. So could I eat the entire bag? 8 net carbs? Kind of, sort of, yeah. We don't want to forget totally about calories because that would be like 600 calories, which could potentially be a decent sized meal by some standards, right? You could have a good size chicken Caesar salad probably for around that. So we don't want to pretend that calories don't exist. We want to stay within our range. Yeah, just aware, but the main thing I'm focusing on is I could eat a bunch, as much as I wanted, of chocolate covered Lakanto sweetened peanuts. I also love Swerve as a sugar substitute. That is my very favorite sugar substitute, and I'll post about that. But if you're wondering what's a good one that doesn't have a funky aftertaste, because some of the monk fruit, some of the stevia have these weird aftertastes. And if you're wanting to avoid that, I really, really do love Swerve. And it's, you can use it for baking. You can sub it out. They have a powdered sugar. They have a brown sugar version. And so I use the powdered sugar like on my oat bran. And then it would still feel like that homey, happy, comfort foody kind of porridge feeling that I liked. But then I also some days didn't sweeten it. Talking about my oat bran, and I just went for savory, and I'm like, I really like the savory saltiness. And salt is important, especially when you're doing low carb or keto. And so some days I just had savory oat bran. It sounds weird to put like salt on your oat bran, and it's kind of like a polenta, I guess. Anyway, so that I hope walks you through how I calculated the net carbs. So we're having freedom, carb freedom, because we can have up to 120 a day. But it's not like we're trying to meet that requirement necessarily. You could also have none. You could also fast for the day, and that would count. And I did not, for the record, do any fast days where I didn't eat anything. I did have a couple of days where I just had really low appetite. And so I ate what I felt like, and I wasn't hungry. But I think the second or the third day that I was like, wow, I had like no appetite. Like, how much did I actually eat? And I went back through because I wasn't logging my food, to me, when I was doing the challenge, if I was logging my food, that just felt like an extra step that was going to be too heavy. I felt like it was going to knock me off my path. It was just going to be one extra thing. And I'm like, if I try to log everything I eat, I'm just going to fail out. And I know me, and I know that's just too much. I'm only going to count carbs. So that's what I did. But on this one day where it was like the second or third day, and I was like, I just really haven't eaten that much. Like, how much did I eat? And I went through and I like added, like I had a yogurt, but I used the Too Good version, which has less lactose and so fewer carbs, right? Like 2 net carbs in a whole like little thingy of yogurt, like a full size one. And that can kind of feel like a meal sometimes, or a really hearty snack. So I went back through and only one day, this only happened one day, but I was like, I discovered at the end of the day, I ate 325 calories today. I don't think I should do that very often. And I'm not advocating that at all. But I was just like, I was listening to my body. My body kind of wanted a break. And then the next day I was like eating again, and I was back in normal range. So just, I say that because I want you to feel free to listen to yourself. And if your body wants a break, okay. If your body's hungrier, okay. I still was doing 2 workouts a day at this point, and strength training and stuff. And like some people are like, you got to have your protein no matter what. And I was like, I just did what I felt like, because I honored and respected my own opinion. Honor and respect your own opinion about yourself, as long as you feel like you're under control. Now let's talk about blood sugar, because that is the key. The first time you're starting to do a little bit of this lower carb stuff, it's almost like any kind of addiction. The first 3 days that you make that change, your brain is like, no, it's unsafe. Don't do it. Go back to normal. Right. Like, and there's yeast, there's microbiome stuff that when you take sugar away from it, it starts to starve and die, and it's fighting for its life inside of your cells and your DNA. Like, eat the sugar so I don't die. Like, this is your little sugar bugs, or whatever you want to call them. That's what they talk about for cavities. So that's a word we use around my house sometimes. But so there's this life or death struggle trying to make you eat more sugar if you have been eating a lot of sugar. And so you just have to be like, I choose. It's my body, my soul's in control. I'm going to choose to find the low, easy ride of blood sugar, right? And so the first 3 days can be painful while all of this chaos and transition is happening. But then pretty soon, after you stop spiking your sugars back and forth, eating sugar, burning through it, eating sugar, right? That roller coaster. Once you kind of settle in, and this part where I keep doing this motion, I call it the descent. And the descent is hard and miserable. When you've ate a lot of sugar and your body's like, you're hungry again, eat something, it's the hangry, right? That's not foreign to any of us. But as you transition from blood sugar going crazy up and down and having to kind of trying to eat sugar, trying to keep it up here, when you come into the descent, this low, easy ride, that's you just cruise along there. You can do that for weeks, and you don't battle sugar cravings when you help your body settle into that low, smooth blood sugar lane. And so I want to acknowledge and validate that, yes, it will be tough. Descent sucks. It's not fun. It's miserable. You're probably going to think about food a lot when you're going from eating lots of carbs to not eating very many carbs, but the reward is so worth it. Your peace of mind is worth it. And this low blood sugar zone, you can just live there. And some days I was like, I could eat a portion of that treat. I have enough carbs for it. But I'm just so good right now. I don't want to mess with this groove I'm in. I'm in this low blood sugar groove. It feels good. It feels peaceful. I'm not stressed out. I'm not struggling. I don't want to mess with that. So I just be like, meh, I don't need the thing. Even though they're like, it's free here. It's in your face. I'm like, but I'm so good right now. I don't need it. Maybe I'll do the next one. I'm free. I could. Maybe I'll do the next one. I don't know. And so just having that freedom and realizing that there's more freedom in that temporary restriction of going through and just getting to that low blood sugar zone. I want you to feel freedom. I want you to feel self-love and self-pride in your choices. And that blood sugar is so key in my experience. All right. We spent some great quality time together this morning. I want to I've talked about several things about how many carbs you should have, how to count them, what a carb does. I'll just say this in this discussion to not leave it out. If you want to think about how carbs behave in your body, this is the best analogy I've ever heard, and I wish I remember who to cite it to. But if you think about if I have a freezer, a small freezer inside of my house, connected to my fridge, right? It's below my fridge, my little pull-out freezer. And then I also have a large chest freezer in my garage. So carbs are like the quick fix energy stores in your muscle, and your muscle is like, I need energy. And so that's like you in the house, and you're like, let me go get the thing I need out of the freezer. The easiest thing to get in the freezer, because I could get food from the freezer in my kitchen or in the garage, right? Your body can get energy from the stored carbs in your muscles or from your fat, right? You see the analogy? So what's easiest and quickest is just to go to the freezer in my kitchen and just grab whatever I need and I'm done, right? But if there's nothing in the freezer inside my house, I'm gonna have to open the door and go down steps and go out and open the chest freezer and get the thing and come back in the house. It's a little more work, but I can still get what I need, right? It was still in the freezer. It was a little more work to get to that freezer. So when you have carbs in your liver and your muscles and your blood sugar, that's the easiest, quickest, like, need energy? Okay, so your body will look for that. As you train yourself to be metabolically flexible, that's the term. Metabolically flexible means your body can either grab energy from carbs or from stored fat, right? That flexibility, being able to go back and forth. And so that's what happens. That's kind of the opposite of what you may be familiar with, insulin resistance, how some people have trouble accessing fat because of insulin stuff. And we won't have a long discussion on that today, but just know your body's just, this is how it operates. And we have to train it to go and grab the fat from the outside freezer, because just like your food in your kitchen, you could go to the freezer inside or the freezer outside. Your body, for energy, can go to the quick fix carbs stored at easy to access levels, or it's a little more work. And we're going to have to like open the door, go down the stairs, go to the freezer, open the chest freezer, get the thing, carry it back in. It's a little more cumbersome. It's a little more work, but the body can find what it needs in the outside freezer or in your stored fat. And once you go to the freezer 5-10 times in your kitchen and it's always empty, then you're like, I'm going to stop looking in the inside freezer because I just know I have to go to the outside freezer, right? And your body does the same thing. We're not going to look for carbs in the muscle and the liver and the whatever, like, or just do a quick scan. Yeah, no, there's nothing there. Just go get the energy from the fat, right? And so as you train yourself to look for that, and that can be a period of time. Remember, I had done some of these programs before where I had started to train my body in bits and pieces through intermittent fasting and some other, strict keto things I've done. If you don't have that in your background, it's okay. You can use this carb counting method, this carb freedom method that I use with up to 120 calories to train your body. It may take a little longer than if you're going hardcore, 20 carbs a day. But for me, again, the priority was sustainability. So we talked about, I've given kind of bits and pieces of examples of things I ate. I will go ahead and add kind of a section of go-to snacks, of go-to meals, of eating out things. I'll do that. I'll plug in a few connected to this video or inserted in this video as I get this ready to release out. But I want you to know that it can be easy. You'll find brands that you like of protein bars. I got in the habit of getting, boiled eggs, peeled boiled eggs from the egg section of the grocery store, because that's just a quick, easy. And I found that after a while, like if I was hungry, I could eat one boiled egg with some salt on it. And I'm like, I'm good for a few hours. Like that wasn't what I would have thought of as a snack or a mini meal. Or maybe a handful of nuts. I had nuts around me, nut butters in little snack packs. There's some things. So I'll give you some details, a little bit more than what I've sprinkled here of things that I did eat. But the main thing is I don't want you to struggle. I want you to just find sustainability, stability, and find serenity, and just be like, I used to struggle with this thing. I remember I was so cute. I didn't know. I just didn't know what worked for my body then. But now it's easy, right? I want you to arrive there. I just see a note that I mentioned I was going to talk about reverse dieting. So that's the last thing I'll touch on. And then I'll let you go. In the figure competition world and bodybuilding world, which I was with Beachbody a number of years back, and to support one of their programs that they released, they had an super amateur fitness competition. And I'm like, I think I'm going to do that. So I did the program, I did the thing. And I got myself a blinged out bikini and I showed up on stage, and man, there is nothing like showing up almost naked and being like, judge me. That's quite an experience. I don't know that I'd recommend it for everyone, but it was very eye-opening. Anyway, so in that world, I learned a lot of things. I learned about some interesting things about posing and positioning your body for photos in flattering ways. So we'll talk about that down the road. But there's a term called reverse dieting. So when a hardcore bodybuilder gets ready for a show, they want every muscle, they want every, detail of their physique to show, right? And so they're doing very specific strategic things to do that, eating very kind of unhealthy, taking unhealthy amounts of supplements, purging water from their body. And like, this can be very dangerous. And so I'm certainly not recommending this, but I got my eyes opened wide to that world when I participated in that competition years ago. And so as they do that, first of all, whenever you see somebody on a magazine or on a stage, they don't live that way. And I think that's important to know, like, especially women with six packs, that is not normal. And you're probably jacking with your hormones if you're focused on that. I recommend health and sustainability. Again, I can't say that enough. But anyway, when you see it, just know it's not normal. On a random Tuesday when they're not competing, they do not look like that. So that was eye-opening. But when they do these extreme things to their body to try to win their prize on stage, they are reducing calories like crazy. They're doing abnormal, weird, strategic things to their body for that temporary result. Now, as soon as the competition's over, I guarantee you, most of them, or at least the smart and successful ones that are not damaging their body, they don't go to the buffet and be like, oh my gosh, I ate it all. What they do is begin the process that lasts for weeks of reverse dieting. So if they had dieted down to 0 carbs a day and they had their body in that state to just prep for this one moment on stage, then instead of going back to normal carbs, they'd be like, okay, this week we're going to eat 15 carbs. Next week, we're going to eat 30 carbs. Next week, we're going to eat 60 carbs and see how the body does. Because if you do put your body in that artificial starvation mode, it naturally is going to be like, store, right? And so they don't want to go from super fit to a month later, like, who is this person? Wow. So this is a very strategic and important part of training if you're going to stay in that training space. So they gradually will increase their calories, their carbs, and I won't go into detail on that either, but just know that if you find you've been in a certain pattern and you want to change it, you can teach your body how to do that in a healthy way. And I'm happy to answer specific questions on this. I am not a registered dietitian. Consult your doctor there. We'll make the attorneys happy with that little asterisk. So that said, that applies to all parts of this #8Beautiful challenge as well. So that's everything that I wanted to cover. Again, get to know you so you can get to love you even more. I want you to be happy and proud. I want you to feel like nutrition and dietary choices, you are the master of you. You are in control. You're not confused. You're not at a loss of what to do to see the results that you want. You can do this, and it's not hard. It can just naturally be a part of what you do. Watch the carbs, look for high protein sources, right? Or if you're feeling something different, make that choice. Listen to you. I don't want you craving sugar because you've taken enjoyment out of your life in some area. It's our life. We get to enjoy it. We are privileged to be able to do that. And so find joy in your body, find joy in your choices, allow yourself joy, allow yourself forgiveness, allow yourself a vision of the long game. Okay, if I continue choosing like this, will it get easier? How will it look in 5 years? How will I look in 5 years? How will I feel about the me that I've built? Will I feel strong and empowered? Will I feel self-disciplined is a word that people say, but I think discipline has some negative connotations. I don't want to feel like I'm making and forcing myself to do things. I just want to feel joy and peace and serenity. And I want that for you. So sustainability, stability, and serenity. Those are the goals. And our tool and our framework to get there is by beginning, not for the rest of your life to necessarily count carbs, right? But learning our patterns, learning what our go-to thing is, because now I can take about this much oat bran in my bowl, pour some milk on it, about this much. I don't have to count it, but I know if I do that, I stay on track with my goals. So that's what I want for you, is to just automatically go through that period of discovery, go through that period of learning, be patient as you develop the skill set, and then arrive at that place over time where your reward and your harvest is, I know what to eat, and I can step on the scale at any given day and I feel good. I'm winning at this. I'm winning at managing my body. And that level of self-development will serve you and continue to serve you on your lifelong journey. So thank you for being with me. I appreciate you. I love you. I send good encouragement, good vibes. I'm so glad you're in my world. And as always, you are infinite. I'll see you next time.